Okay. All right. Good afternoon. Thank you very much for coming to this session. Really appreciate it. I'm hoping you're all enjoying the show till far and that you have done your lines to get your surfaces. If you still have to, well, the lines are getting smaller, so maybe now is the moment if you still want to buy one. My name is Mike Ressler. I am a Microsoft evangelist, not working for Microsoft. I'm actually working for Veeam Software. In my role in there, my job is to make sure that I know everything about the Microsoft technologies, especially Hyper-V and System Center. But before that, because I'm not that long in this role, I used to be a consultant, and one of the things I used to do a lot was managing multi-hypervisors, meaning VMware, Xen, Hyper-V itself, with System Center. And that is the topic of today. We're going to look at how we can actually use System Center in our day-to-day job to manage, well, the other hypervisors, as Brad Anderson likes to call them. So what we have on our agenda today is a quick overview of the private cloud. I'm not going to take this too long. I'm not going to bore you with it. You probably have seen this already multiple times in any other session that you went to with System Center. But I'm still going to do a quick recap and point you out which components I'm going to discuss today about what you're going to use to manage VMware and Xen Server. I'm going to talk about the fact that this is going to be a comparison session. I'm not going to be the one explaining why Hyper-V is better than VMware or vice versa. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to explain you also why. And then we're going to talk about these different components that we're going to use to manage our hypervisors and to do our daily job. And we're going to talk about Virtual Machine Manager, Operations Manager, Orchestrator. And in the end, I want to show you one simple example that you would be able to use in your day-to-day job that actually brings those components together and shows you that System Center effectively can easily manage those hypervisors. All right. Let's start with this little overview of the private cloud. So System Center helps deliver IT as a service. You have seen this before, I'm pretty sure. And those who are in this room probably are going to be at the site of the data center administrator. So what we need is a set of components, a set of tools that we can use to do our job. And System Center gives you for that Virtual Machine Manager to work with your hypervisors, gives you Operations Manager to make sure that you can monitor all of your hypervisors plus all of the rest in your infrastructure. We got Configuration Manager, where we can actually use to deploy applications or operating systems or whatever you need to deploy at that moment. We got Data Protection Manager, where we can deliver you backup. Unfortunately, this is one part of the suite within System Center that won't help you with VMware or Xen. You will be able to do backups inside your virtual guests if they're running Microsoft Windows operating system, but you can't do it on a virtualization layer with Data Protection Manager. But I'm also going to talk about Orchestrator and Service Manager because those two are in the middle of this private cloud, and they are going to be the interaction between the app owner that wants to do things and actually the data center administrator. And I'm going to show you that with Orchestrator, you can very easily manage and automate stuff within VMware or Xen. The same thing about Service Manager. If you are using that ticketing system, I'm going to prove to you that you can put those assets that you have, your VMware assets or your Xen assets, that you can bring those into Service Manager automatically without not needing to fill in a lot of Excel sheets or importing or whatever you need to do. Everything can be automated, can be updated when there are changes, and you will have all that information, which means if you got somewhere a hypervisor that went wrong, you can actually say that this one is with a certain ticket and so on. So your entire flow that you're building with System Center within your infrastructure, you will now not only be able to do that on your virtual machines, on your physical machines, but you will be able to take your hypervisor layer with you as well. And that is the idea what I'm going to try to show you here today. All right. Now, why is this not a comparison session? As I said, I do not want to start comparing here why VMware is better than Hyper-V or Xen is better than VMware or whatever the reason is. I don't like those kind of discussions, to be honest. We've seen them this week. If you go to VMworld, you will see them as well. There are multiple blogs out there where you can just see the difference between VMware and Hyper-V and Xen Server. But in the end, I don't think that's not a good discussion. I was talking to a good friend of mine a couple of weeks ago, Greg Shields, and we basically came to the point, well, you know, the virtualization layer, as it is today, it's becoming commodity. It is something that you decide for your infrastructure. And it could be that you go for VMware because you have good reasons. You have trained people in it, you still have a lot of maintenance, and plus you have a few features within the VMware suite that you absolutely need. Then please take VMware. Now, on the other hand, you might say, well, you know what, this Hyper-V hypervisor, it looks good, it seems cheap, maybe we can start in there. And there are even companies now today that we see that are mixing different hypervisors. So whatever hypervisor you choose, at that point, I really don't care anymore. What I really do care about is the fact, how are we going to manage it? Do we really need 5 to 10 different management suites just to be able to manage everything? Or can we bring everything together into one management suite? And that's what this topic is all about today. And I'm also not going to start today telling you what the differences are between System Center or any other management suite out there. In all honesty, I know System Center the best. I do have some knowledge on the other tools, but it would not be a fair comparison. Probably the other suites have some advantages over System Center on a certain topic, but it could be vice versa as well. So today, System Center only, and let's see how we can add VMware and Xen Server in it. Now, one thing I really want to say is if you start thinking, or if you're already using System Center today, one of the biggest difficulties I had within enterprises is actually this picture. So this picture shows you my boss, you got myself as the monitoring guy, and you got a couple of my colleagues, one who's specialized in everything that has to do with virtualization, so he's, in this case, the VMware guy. Then we got the other one who does everything with storage. He's responsible for SANs, direct storage, whatever you can imagine what we had in that infrastructure. And then on the right, we have a guy who is the service desk guy. He's the owner of everything that has to do with incidents, change management, and so on. And he also runs the team that deploys the Windows operating systems and the applications within those virtual machines. Now, what we see in many infrastructures still today is that we do have one boss, but we're not really working together. So here's a small scenario that happens at that time. So I'm the monitoring guy. I'm working with my team. I'm looking at Operations Manager 24/7, well, sort of. And we see at a certain moment that there's a web server under a lot of load. So what we do is we file in an incident to the service desk, and we say, you know what, we need to deploy another one because our website is really getting a lot more traffic, which is good for business, but we need to deploy another one. So the service desk guy fills in all the tickets. If we're a bit automated, I actually can do it myself through a portal, but that's another discussion. So he makes sure the ticket is ready, and he ports it at that moment to the virtual guy because he says, well, it needs a new virtual machine, you need to deploy it. Now the virtual guy probably read that ticket after 2 days, 3 days, because he's got other business to do as well. So he sees it, and then he says, yeah, that's great, I can deploy a virtual machine, but before I do that, I actually need some storage. So he sends it over to the storage guy. Now the storage guy over there, he's Belgian, he's very slow, so it probably takes him a week. I'm Belgian too, so that's why I can make the joke. So it takes him a week and a half before he reads the email and he says, yeah, no problem, I'll build you a storage. Then he reverts it back to the virtual guy. The virtual guy wants to deploy the virtual machine, but of course, by the time he read that the storage is ready, we are 2 days ahead, goes back to the service guy, we lose again some time, and so on, and so on. And by the time I actually get to see, hey, there's a new web server, I'm like, yeah, okay, we already lost the traffic. It's not necessary anymore. So that's not a good thing. And that's because we all worked in silos. Now, if you're going to work with the System Center suite and you really want to do this management over your entire hypervisors, including the Windows virtual machines or Linux or Unix or whatever you're running virtually on those hypervisors and the applications, and you want to do that with one suite, then you have to start dropping the silos. The moment you do that, and the moment you can actually say that the virtual guy gives out some power out of his hands, and the storage guy will do the same thing, and of course the service desk guys will do that as well, and you build in that automation, then you're really going to get a good solution for your private cloud or your infrastructure or whatever you want to call it at this point. All right, enough about the introduction. Let's start with actually seeing what we can do. And the first thing we're going to do is look at Virtual Machine Manager. Why Virtual Machine Manager? Because that is going to be our basis that is going to manage the different hypervisors. So let's start with this overview. I just said that we need to break down those silos. Well, this is what we're going to do. We're going to bring out our hypervisors. We're going to bring out the hardware, and we're going to cut it into some, Microsoft calls it fabrics, other vendors will call it resources, whatever you want to call. In the end, what we need to see is we're going to divide it into computing, CPU, memory. We're going to have some storage. We're going to have some networking. And this is actually a discussion point. I prefer this also as a fabric cluster. Some will say it's not because it's a combination of, but you divide it. And then whatever you put on top of it, I really, really don't care anymore. All that matters is, in the end, that those virtual servers, those virtual machines are running. And whatever they are using below, we don't care, but we need to manage it one thing. So let's see. So the first thing we're going to start is adding Xen servers into virtual machine manager. So we got some prerequisites, right? First, it has to be Xen server 6.0, starting from now with SCVMM 2012 SP1. And you have to install the Microsoft System Center integration pack on your hosts. Now, it's free. It's downloadable the moment you register on the Citrix website and you download Xen server, you will be able to download that as well. So that's not really a problem. Then you have some additional requirements. One of them is that if you're going to use live migration or you're going to create some virtual machines through Virtual Machine Manager, then you're going to have a DHCP server where the Xen hosts actually are able to reach that and get an IP in it. The reason for that is because at that moment, what Xen server is doing is creating a transfer VM. And that transfer VM, which includes some stuff like bits and iSCSI connections and stuff like that, it really needs that DHCP. It needs a quick IP. It will do some stuff, and then will destroy itself. But without a DHCP server, it won't work. And besides the fact that the DHCP server has to be reachable by your Xen servers, it also has to be known within VMM as a part of the infrastructure. So that's quite important. And the second one, if your Virtual Machine Manager library, and the library is actually where you're going to store all your templates, your applications, and all that kind of stuff, if it's Windows Server 2008, then don't forget to install bits. Because if you don't have that, he won't be able to use bits to send over the templates to the different hosts, and they will fail your deployments. From the moment you got 2008 R2 or higher, it's not an issue anymore. It will be automatically added, but we have seen this before. And the last thing we want to say about this one when you add Xen server is that it's direct managed. And that's a big difference with how you manage VMware, and I'll come back to that one a little bit later. But VMM will talk to the hosts directly and not through the Xen Center server. So very important here. All right, so what we can do with this is actually quite a lot. So from the moment those hosts are within Virtual Machine Manager, you can use, for example, the VMM command shell. Basically, this means PowerShell. And those of you who know Virtual Machine Manager will know that there's a very powerful PowerShell engine behind it. Actually, everything you do in the GUI in Virtual Machine Manager is actually PowerShell in the back end. So that means you can do a lot of automation also on those Xen servers. Now, as we just saw, you can add Xen server hosts and pools. Well, we call them clusters. Xen server calls them pools. It's the same thing. But very important here is they have to be built, deployed, and configured before you add them to Virtual Machine Manager. Because from Virtual Machine Manager, you cannot do that automatically. The same thing for changes. If you want to do changes to those pools, you actually have to do that back at the Xen level and not at the Virtual Machine Manager level. He will pick it up, but you still need to do it separately. We got possibilities about placement. That means with VMM, you can deploy virtual machines to a bunch of hosts, and he will find out, based on a lot of criteria, which is the best placement host at that moment, which one is the best free, which has the most resources available, and so on. We can deploy services, and I'll come back to that in my demo. But that means we can actually build ourselves a service with multiple virtual machines, for example, a SQL backend, a web server, and, I don't know, a middle tier somewhere with some business intelligence. Build that in a template and use that to deploy it to your Xen service, which is actually very nice if you are in a hosting environment, or maybe you're just deploying always the same set of virtual machines for your developers or something. You can build it in an editor and automatically deploy that instantly without needing to do something. And we can build private clouds. This is also something which sounds maybe normal, but it's very easy to choose a few hosts and then build around the cloud. I'm going to show you that as well. We can use dynamic optimization and power optimization. So make sure that your virtual machines are dynamically moved to the right host. And with power optimization, if your hardware supports it, we will be able, with Virtual Machine Manager, to shut down that host when it's not needed at that time. So to save you some costs, some energy, and so on. We can do the standard migration. Everything Xen supported, we will do as well with Virtual Machine Manager. We got the library, Virtual Machine Library. You can build a virtual machine in Xen Server and then take that inside that library as a template, which means afterwards you can just say create virtual machine from the template, and everything which is configured in there will then automatically be deployed as well. We cannot use Xen Server templates. This is very important. If you have built your Xen Server templates already and you want to start using Virtual Machine Manager, what you're actually going to need to do at that moment, well, you got two options. Or you start from zero, or you're going to deploy your Xen Server, that template, and then import it as a template into Virtual Machine Manager so that it's got that template format. And that will work as well. Networking, everything is supported, but again, it needs to be built outside of Virtual Machine Manager. The same for storage. It will see it, it will be able to look at it, you will have the properties, but everything you do on storage-wise, you will have to do outside, right? Virtual machine management, of course, you can start, stop, all of the things, not really. You can do a conversion. Now, this is actually, you can do a conversion from a Xen Server virtual machine to Hyper-V through the P2V mechanism if you want to. Now, I'm assuming if you're using Xen Server, that's not the idea that you're going to do that through Hyper-V, but it is possible. And finally, you can use the performance and resource optimization tips, which works together with Operations Manager, to manage that entire infrastructure better. And that will actually give you, look, that host is overloaded. Maybe you need to add something more, or you need to move some VMs or stuff like that. So that combination works as well. Now, what is not supported is you cannot do host-to-host migration when your virtual machine is stopped with LAN migration between Xen Server and other hosts. That's not possible. Update management through VMM is also not supported, which means if you have updates for Xen Server hosts, you cannot do that through VMM. You have to use another mechanism. On the other hand, you can do that only for Hyper-V through VMM. You can't do it for VMware as well. But if you already got a system in your place that does the updates for all your virtual machines, your physical machines, you're probably not going to use VMM anyway because you have that other system doing that for you. And last but not least, VMM has this option to create from an empty machine that you can do a bare metal deployment of a Hyper-V host. Again, I already told you, the host has to be ready before it needs to be imported into VMM, so you can't do that here as well with VMM directly. Few tips about troubleshooting. Most cases, well, almost every case that we met when we couldn't add the host or we had issues managing it, it was because we couldn't ping it or we couldn't find it through DNS. And the second thing was, if that worked, then somebody forgot to actually install that supplement pack that I talked to you about. Now, how you can verify that? You can download the slides later on. I'm not going to read it out, but this is actually just a comment you can do to see if it's installed on your server, yes or no. All right, let's talk about VMware now. So what is supported starting from VMM 2012 SP1? We got vCenter 4.1, 5.1, and 5.0, ASX 4.1, ESXi 4.1, 5.0, and 5.1. So that's supported. Same set of features, actually. I'm not going to run through them all, but we have that same options that we can do with Xen Server. We'll be able to VMware as well, with my few differences, and that's on the part of the library. If you're going to import a VMware virtual machine that is thin provisioned, and you're going to import that into your library, that will become automatically tick provisioned. Now, that's not so good for your storage. Another way you can do is actually make there a template of it, get that into your library, and at that moment, it will leave the TIM provisioned disk on your VMware infrastructure. And the only thing that's copied to the library is the metadata. And that makes it more effective on storage so that, that you lose less storage, of course. Same thing not supported. So update management, For ESX, you're going to have to find yourself another solution. If you're a VMware administrator, I'm pretty sure that you will be using another solution as well, besides VMM or SCCM or something like that. Bare metal computer conversion, again, that's not working. ESX has to be installed before you're going to add it to your virtual machine manager infrastructure. And the last thing is the dynamic memory feature. Hyper-V has now virtual machines that can have dynamic memory. That's not supported on ESX hosts, basically because it's a Hyper-V thing alone. So it's quite obvious that's not supported. But enough with the talk. Let's see if we just can have a look at how it looks in Virtual Machine Manager. Right. Now, let's see. I'm going to go to my Virtual Machine Manager. That should be the server. Here we go. Now, for my demos, everything I've got is VMware. So I don't have Xen servers, unfortunately, available in my demo environment. But everything what you will see me do is perfectly possible with Xen also. And the steps will actually be quite the same. Just on the automation part, we will probably use a few other commands, but they are exactly the same. All right, so let's have a look. And I talked to you about fabrics, right? And what you can see here is actually that we have those fabrics. We've got our hosts. I've divided them in two parts because we got an office in Atlanta, we got one in St. Petersburg, so we got some clusters everywhere. In Atlanta, I've got 2 ASX hosts that I was able to use, and they're created within one cluster, right? The same thing I can go is if I go to networking. I'm not going to go deep into it because there are other sessions here at TechEd that go deep into virtual machine manager networking and stuff. But you can see my LAN 1 DMZ and my storage network is actually ported straight from VMware into my environment. I haven't created those. They were created before me, and the only one I built here as a demo for somebody else was another logical network where I defined a part of that network that people can use. We also have the same thing, if you look at it, for MAC address pools that you can build if you want to. By default, there is already a VMware MAC address pool in it. You can look at your storage here, but one of the downsides of my environment is that they're not really servers, but workstations, which mean I don't have the storage support to actually read that out. It's a bit of a shame, but on the other hand, if we're going to go to one of these servers, here we go, and I'm going to go to the properties, then you actually will see that I have quite some information on that machine. So it tells me what kind of processors I've got, how many memory there is, how many still available, and we'll see that in a second more. How many storage I have. At this moment, I have around 5.7 terabytes with quite some space available, actually, and so on. So all that information is ported to Virtual Machine Manager, and you can use that on a daily basis to do your work, right? Now, if you're going to go to virtual machines and services, then one of the things I have to show you is how to build a cloud based on ESX. Now, you see that I already have a cloud called VMware Cloud Production. It's a cloud built on those 2 ESX servers. What I'm going to do now is build another cloud at those same ESX servers, but limited specifically for, let's say, a development department or something, right? So let's do this. We're going to create ourselves a cloud. We're going to give it a name, so this is TechEd NA. Here we go, no description for today. We're going to put some resources in it, so I can take all the hosts within Atlanta, but let's say I had multiple sites with multiple servers. I would be able to say, you know what, 2 servers here, 3 servers there, and maybe none in the other parts of the world. So you can choose exactly what you want. You can also choose a VMware resource pool if you want to. If you have configured those, you can choose that to build your clouds as well. Then we're going to choose our logical networks, and so in this case, it's my LAN 1 DMZ network and my storage network I need. You can choose load balancers. By default, you only have the Microsoft NLB load balancer in it, but if you have some devices that you can import, like F5, for example, or a Citrix load balancer or something, you can import those as well, and then actually use those within those service templates so that end users, developers, or whatever, can build that solution with a real load balancer. Now, I haven't got one, and I do have one. One of the things actually you can do at that moment is on those load balancers, create a VIP template. with your settings, with your rules, and your ports and whatever you want to use. So again, those developers have the possibility to do that, or your customers, but you're still in control. But now you're already seeing that it's going to be a joint operation. So you got the virtual guy that needs to work together with the network guy, and we already talked about storage and so on and so on. So those silos really need to be go away. So we got some port classifications. In this case, I'm not going to use one because we haven't built one on that specific network. These ones are default by VMM itself. But if you have those, you will be able to select those or not select them when you're not allowed to use them. We got some storage, which, like I said, in this case, my local storage is not supported. We can choose the library, which means if an end user builds a virtual machine and wants to store it as a template, we can actually give him that possibility to store it at a specific location. And at the same time, we might be able to give him, for example, a part of the library share. Here we go. So that he can use specific templates or services or whatever is in there, like ISOs and whatever you can imagine, to do his work, to deploy, to install, to whatever he wants to do. And then we're finally going to build our capacity. So by default, everything is unlimited. We're not going to do that. So I'm going to limit him here a bit. What I'm going to do is he can get 10 virtual CPUs. That's nice. Maybe 20 gigabyte of RAM for this cloud. That's way too much storage, so let's make that 2,500 gigabyte. And the maximum of number of virtual machines he can deploy is 10. So you're really limiting, and you can build multiple clouds on the same resources. So what we're now doing is actually that part that I showed you of the fabric. I'm giving him compute, I'm giving him storage, I'm giving him networking. I'm actually giving him a cluster as well, but he doesn't know that. And he doesn't care anymore what is running below. He doesn't even know anymore whether it's VMware or Hyper-V or Xen server. And that's the idea that we're doing here. Here we go. I can do capability profiles because I'm now only using Xen server, ESX server, sorry. I'll check ESX server. But if it would have been a cloud with a mix of different hypervisors, I could choose the different capabilities here so that that can be used as well. We got our typical summary, we got finish, and then we're on. Now, if you're going to look a little bit further, so my job is running, building that cloud. It's actually there. But then you get all the additional information about your clusters as well. So now you will actually see in my cluster what it's doing, what my performance is doing on a monthly base. You can see the memory I'm using, the amount of processors I'm using within that cloud, and so on. And even more, if I'm going to go to virtual machines, you will actually see the virtual machines that are running on my cluster. Here we go. All right. One last thing I wanted to show you is this service template. Here we go. This is the service designer, if it wants to open. So I built quickly a two-tier service, right? We got a SQL server and a web server, end of story. Now, because I have a template that runs on ESX, which is my Windows Server 2012 template, I can actually just drag it to, well, let's say this one here, second tier. And because that template has already some information in it, it automatically now knows that it needs to connect to a network, to the LAN 1 DMZ network. And if I open this, I can actually start configuring like I'm configuring building blocks. Here we go. If it wants to open it. So let's go to general for a second here. First thing I can show is, by default, we'll be deploying one virtual machine out of it, but we can actually say that we can scale this out to 5, which means you will create 5 clones of this machine. You can change the hardware configuration here, because my template by default is one with 8 gigabyte of RAM and 4 CPUs, if I'm not mistaken. You can change all that to match it specifically what you need. So what I'm doing, I've got one template, and I'm now using a designer to change a lot of building blocks. I'm not going to go real deep into it, but you will be able to see, for example, in my OS configuration, I can choose which domain they're going to use. I can add the local administrator credentials, and I can all make that hidden. And even if it's a developer doing the installation and needs to join his virtual machine to domain, the only thing he sees is that he's using a domain join account. What the name is of that account and what the password is, he does not know. He's just got the right to use it when he deploys his virtual machines. And I can go further. I can start deploying applications based on websites, on SQL, and so on and so on. But again, if you want to know more about this, there are much better sessions that go very deep in that. All right, let's switch back to here for a second. Where did I leave my pointer? Here we go. Sorry about that. Now let's talk about the second part, Operations Manager. So we got Virtual Machine Manager. Everything is in. Great. We're managing it. Fantastic. Now we need to know what's happening, right? Now again, this is a situation. What are we going to use? Operations Manager for our Windows machines, vCenter, or maybe something else for managing our infrastructure. That's not the right way. We want to bring this into one single glass of paint, right? So we're going to use Operations Manager for that. So we want to be able to discover everything which is inside those virtualization layer. We want to make sure that we are monitoring. If there's an issue, it pops up and that we can resolve it. We want to have visualization. One of the real things that would be nice is to see from the hardware to the application an entire tree of what we got. We got hardware, we got the virtualization layer, we got our virtual machines running, we got an operating system, we got the application, or vice versa, depending on how you like to see it. And of course, we need to have reporting. We need to make sure that we can do capacity prediction. Certainly, if you're going to start automating more, that means people are starting to deploy, and you are not actually knowing anymore every minute what's happening, which could lead to your hypervisors getting full, right? So within Operations Management, we need a few components to be able to manage all those hypervisors. First, we're going to need to use the System Center Virtual Machine Management Pack. We need the Hyper-V Management Pack as well when we do that. We need a Xen Management Pack and a VMware Management Pack. And this is a bit where it becomes tricky. One of the things that Microsoft will not deliver with this System Center suite is a management pack for Xen or for VMware. So that means we're going to have to look at the market and see if there are other ones. Now, the one for Xen, there are a few, but the one that is really used a lot in the industry is the one by Comtrade. The link is there as well. It's a very good management pack that will actually discover your entire infrastructure and get you all the information you need. You will be able to monitor alerts. You will see that your pools are full. You will see if you got IOPS issues, and so on and so on and so on. So this is a good management pack. It will also give you a topology map. So you will see your entire infrastructure, how it works. And last but not least, it's completely agentless, which means you don't have to deploy specific agents to your Xen server hosts just to get this working. So this is quite nice managed pack. The other one is actually built by Veeam, the company I actually work for, so my apologies for this little advertisement here. I had no choice. And it will give you the same thing as the Comtrade for Xen at this moment. You will be able to monitor, you have topology maps, it's agentless as well, and you will have the possibility to do capacity prediction as you wish. We're going to see that in a bit second, right? Now, for the SCVMM management pack, that's a bit of a trick. Many people say, well, I want to download this management pack from the website and we cannot find it. Well, the reason behind that is if you're going to build the integration between Virtual Machine Manager to Operations Manager, and you need PowerShell 2.0 for it, some prerequisite MPs, which is the SQL MP, the Hyper-V MP, and then automatically he will bring that management pack into Operations Manager yourself. So if you want to do this and you can't find the management pack online, that's the reason. The moment you build the integration, then it works. One last thing, something that's been forgotten also a lot, on the VMM server, you have to install the Operations Manager console. Not the entire system, but just the console. Why? Because Virtual Machine Manager through PowerShell will use that console to connect to the management server of Operations Manager itself. All right, let's jump back to demo. Here we go. So first, what I want to show you is one of these topology maps, at least if my machine wants to work with me. Thank you. And remember those silos I talked about, those different fabrics? This is one of those. Now I just have my infrastructure, my VMware infrastructure, based on compute topology. So we got our vCenter connection, we got a data center, we got our cluster, we got our ESX hosts. Here we go. And then you can actually see from that ESX host, you can see how the hardware is doing, the HPAs are doing, its network cards are doing, and also if it's in maintenance mode or not. So that basically means at that point in time, when you put your hosts into maintenance mode, it will be replicated to Operations Manager as well, so that you don't get false alarms and that not everybody starts to jump trying to fix something which you're actually working on at that time. But you also see the virtual machines that are running on those hosts. And this is dynamically. If you live migrate a virtual machine from one host to another, then this map will be updated, right? Now I told you, we have now the hardware, we've got the virtualization layer and so on, but I wanted to see the apps as well and the operating system. Now if you just click on one of these virtual machines, and we have an Operations Manager agent installed, and the right management packs from Microsoft, of course, then you will be able to see the virtual server. If you want to work a bit with me, here we go. The operating system. What kind of operating system running? This is a SQL server, so you can see we've got SQL in here, we got some services running on it, license management, and so on. So you actually have an overview from the top to the bottom. That means whatever issue you have with whatever virtual machine, you will be able to trace it through the entire line and see where the problem is. And then still, it could be that you have to call the virtual guy to fix it when it's somewhere within VMware. That, of course, is possible. And there are other maps as well. There are maps that you can see this kind of information on storage topology, for example. Let me see if I have it open here. Here we go. And it just gives me another view. Because, well, I think that most of us, that is the pain point that we have within a virtual environment, storage, IOPS, things like that. And now we're actually going to look at it from the data store perspective and see which VMs are running. And again, go through those VMs and see the operating system and the applications. And that will give us the opportunity, if one of our data stores is having issues, whatever the issue is, IOPS issues or just getting full, that you will be able immediately to see that something is affected, that we have an issue and it needs to be resolved as fast as possible. So I also talked about reporting, right? Very important. Let's stay with data stores here for a second. Here we go. And this one will actually give me, based on every data store, what it's doing. So for example, let's take LUN3 here, which holds my virtual machines. And what we're going to see here is how our IOPS are doing. And it will also shows us a graphical overview here with colors, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, of the virtual machines that are actually being the heaviest on my storage. So I see that my SQL server, which is actually running my entire System Center suite, is giving me a hard time on this environment. And the next one is another server, and we got a pfSense server. They're all giving me a hard time on my storage. So you get that visualization through something you're using on a day-to-day basis. And then, of course, when we talk about monitoring, we also have to talk about visualization during the day. So this is just a simple view that you get within Operations Manager, and that gives you some top figures. And then you can see, for example, that LUN5 is also one I'm probably going to have to look at. Oh no, free space, that's okay. It's the maximum latency and the IOPS. Then I need to look at LUN3. And then, by default, all the different alerts, of course. What is happening in my VMware environment, or if it would have been Xen, exactly the same thing. What is happening there? What kind of alerts we're having? And I think we're having some issues here today. This is also located in Belgium, so it's probably the same rule as the Belgium guy, pretty slow. But you get a lot of information, and it is exactly now in the same tool as you're using for your operating systems and your applications. That means it also correlates. It will not tell you that SQL is in an issue when it's actually the VMware layer that's having an issue there. So less alerts, but straight to the point what you need. Oh, one thing I also wanted to show you before I forget is if you're using Service Manager, if it wants to open, then one of the things that System Center Suite does very well is actually making sure that automatically your CIs, your assets, are imported through Configuration Manager, Operations Manager, Active Directory, Exchange, and so on. Now, because the System Center Suite uses a framework with management packs, and we are actually importing management packs within Operations Manager, we can import those in Service Manager as well. And then now you can see here my ticketing system or my incident system. We actually have some configuration items where we can see the information about our clusters, our data stores. And let's say I'm going to take this cluster, and you get all that information in there as well. That means if you then embedded license management on this, then you can have that as well too with less work. So I think that integration is really something you should look at, and that you can save a lot of time in not doing manual work at that time. All right, here's my clicker. All right, let's talk Orchestrator. Orchestrator is the glue between all these tools, with all these components, and also between your different hypervisors and so on, right? What it does, it makes sure that all these different components are going to work together. Now, Orchestrator works with integration packs. And an integration pack is, well, call it a package that holds a lot of activities. And every activity that does a certain thing, like create a virtual machine, add disk, create user, things like that. So for Virtual Machine Manager, there is, of course, an integration pack that can use a lot of activities to automate stuff. For VMware, there's one as well. It's actually created by Microsoft. It works very well. You can use that to talk to your vCenters and to do some stuff. Now, you see one missing, and I'll come back to that one in a second. But these are just the simple activities you can do within Virtual Machine Manager. You can create checkpoints, new disk from a VHD. You can update roles. You can update the virtual machine. You can change a lot of these settings automatically. Plus, probably a very important one is run Virtual Machine Manager PowerShell script. I already told you that everything you do within Virtual Machine Manager in the UI is PowerShell. And by the way, if you run through the UI, you will get a button below that you can click on, and you can see what you're actually doing in PowerShell. That means if you don't have the activity, you still will be able to automate it because you can add that specific PowerShell script in there. The second one is the VMware integration pack. And all the VMware administrators in here, I'm pretty sure that you can see that you can already do a lot by default. That means no scripting, no PowerShell, no nothing. Just drag the different activities, and you're going to see that as well in the demo, that you just drag all these stuff together, and you are building your workflows to create virtual machines, update virtual machines, whatever you want to do. Now, Xen. There is not an integration pack for Xen. I don't think at this time Microsoft is actually building one or will build one. I don't think it's on the roadmap. I could be mistaken, of course. But how are you going to do that? Well, you still can do that, actually. First, if your Xen hosts are connected to Virtual Machine Manager, then you can actually use this. You can still deploy your virtual machines from a template that it's using a Xen template in the back. Nobody knows. At least Orchestrator doesn't know. It will work anyway. So you can still do all that stuff, but you just have to think different at that moment and think about the Virtual Machine Manager integration pack and not a specific Xen integration pack. And you can use PowerShell. It's always PowerShell, and within Orchestrator, you can build all the little PowerShell commands. Let's have a look. I'm going to close Service Manager here and go to my Orchestrator server. So what I've got here is a new runbook. There's nothing on it, and I'm simply going to do some things here. One of the things we can do, for example, is by using runbook control, we can initialize data. And within that, we can kind of put parameters to that runbook. Parameters could be virtual machine manager name, virtual machine name, sorry, how many CPU, how many memory, etc., etc. Based on that information, we could go, for example, to the VMware integration pack and then just say create virtual machine. Now, if I open this, if it wants to open, here we go, and I go to the configuration, the only thing now I'm choosing is actually my connection to which vCenter. So if you're in an environment that has multiple vCenters, you can build runbooks that are for a specific vCenter and then to other ones. But you always have to provide a connection here. So we're using my vCenter connection, and then it gives me all this information. Which folder path, which host system path, which resource pool, data store, virtual machine name, and so on and so on. And you actually have some much more optional properties here that we can use. Well, in this case, only one, actually, the ISO image path. But you have to fill in all this information, right? Now, there are two ways to do it. It would not be automation if I start filling it in here, because then basically what I'm doing is doing the same thing over and over again. But what I need to do is actually, and let me just quickly put 1, 2, 3 parameters here. Call this one name, this one memory, and this one, let's say CPU. Here we go. Finish. I'm going to connect those two so that it becomes a workflow. And when I double-click now on this Create VM, choose my connection, then I can actually say for my virtual machine name, right-click on it, subscribe to the published data, and that will be that input that we have given him, which is the name. Now that means at that point in time, you can really start thinking about building around everything. That means something has been created, maybe through a self-service portal, somebody asked for a virtual machine. It will become all that information available in Service Manager in some kind of service request ticket. Then from that moment, after the approval of his line manager or maybe the IT administrator or whatever, he approves it, automatically this runbook will kick in, passes that information out of that ticket, and starts actually deploying that virtual machine with all the information it needs and a amount of time, depending on how fast you can deploy on your host, they will be ready and the end user will be very happy. So let me finish up here quickly. Now, besides that, you can also do it differently. This moment, I start from I need input. Somebody has to give me input. But for example, if you're going to look at the Operations Manager integration pack, you can use Monitor Alert. Let me open that for a second and connect to my Operations Manager server. One of the things I could do is, well, look at a certain alert with a name that contains snapshot. Here we go. From the moment he finds that, and he's actually checking that every 2 minutes with an Operations Manager, whether there's going to be an alarm with a snapshot, one of the things, for example, I could do then within VMware vSphere integration pack is actually, revert the virtual machine snapshot. So that our virtual machine snapshots, this is one of the alarms that you can have, that it's getting too old 30 days, then you can revert that if you want to. Or you can just simply make sure that it's applied or something like that. So all of this automation comes into play at that moment with Orchestrator. All right. Let me just go to, is it demo? Yes, it is. This could be one of the most simplest runbooks that you're going to build. Initialize the data, create a virtual machine from a template, and start virtual machine. Now, I would not advise you to build this runbook because there's no checkpoints in here. So if something goes wrong along the way, you don't know it. Well, you know the VM won't be deployed, but you don't know what went wrong. But in the end, I got my data from somewhere. I create my virtual machine from a template. If it wants to open, what it will show me is that I make a connection to my virtual machine manager where I have got that Windows Server 2012 template in, and then I'm using to deploy it to a cloud. That cloud can be also something you give in manually, but that can be automated through the State app as well. Here it is. See? So I'm using the template. I got the VM name from the data. The capability profile is an ESX server. I don't have the path because that's not necessary because I'm actually using a cloud at this moment, and that will find the right host out of its own and place it there. So a lot of things you can do. All right, now let's have a look how we can combine everything, right? So one of the examples that I've been using a lot with customers, and it's been used also a lot, is actually very simple. When you have this developer teams, one of the things they want to do from time to time is reconfigure your virtual machine. On the other hand, you also have the virtualization administrator that are always under pressure because every developer or every user wants to have virtual machine with at least 8 GB of RAM, at least 4 CPUs, and give me a terabyte of storage, please. Why? I need it. Now, one of the things you can do, for example, here, and I've got this report here. Let's see where it is. This one. That actually will show me some interesting data. So over the amount of 30 days, and the more time you have, the better the report gets, of course, it would tell me that actually I can save on my infrastructure 36.5 GB of RAM. The same for CPUs. Now, one of my servers here, DC2, as you can see, is now allocated 8 GB of RAM, but my report tells me that 4.3 should be enough. So that's quite a lot. And it actually showed me over 30 months here, shows me in this graphic, what it is actually using, what the peak is, and what the average is. So you can use that. Actually, if you look at it, my peak for the DC on 1 month is 3.37. So that's not even a lot. The same thing you will be able to see for your CPUs. DC02. We got 4 CPUs here, 4 vCPUs, and it actually tells me 1 is more than enough. If you look at the average, if you look at the maximum that I'm using, if you look at my peaks, I'm not really doing a lot with that server. So I can steal some of that. So since I'm the operations manager guy, I still don't have the right to change that. That's the virtual guy. But then I'm going to go to this portal. Here we go. And I'm going to do a request. And this is the portal of Service Manager. And I've got some requests in here. Not that many. I've got 2 built in this one, I think. I've got VM recovery request that can automatically recover a virtual machine that kind of, destroyed. I want to have my backup back. But in this case, what I want, reconfiguring of a virtual machine. So I've seen my report. And now it opens my request form. And my apologies for the demo machines being a bit slow here. I'm going to fill in the name of the server. Now, if you put a little bit more work in it, you can make that a drop-down list, and even only the VMs that you're allowed to see, depending on, well, I'm Belgian, remember? I'm going to give it 1 virtual CPU, and I'm going to change it to 5,000 megabyte of RAM. Going to say next. He's going to say, are you sure? Yes, I am. Submit. And I've got created my ticket here, right? Now, what happens in this case is this workflow that I built, and I'll show you that in a second, what it does, it will first ask approval. Because otherwise, everybody would be able to start playing with differences and make sure their machines are even harder. So we're not going to do that. I'm going to go back to Service Manager and show you the ticket. Work items, all open service requests, refresh, just to be sure that's the good one. Hey, no. Here we go. And it actually shows me what I've been requesting. Now, this is a template I built. Well, built is a large word. I basically opened a standard request, filled in some data in advance, and saved it as a request, as a specific request for this type of request that you get on the portal. So let's say the other one, recovery of a virtual machine, will have different things in it. So we got the urgency, priority, blah, blah, blah. We got the user input here, and we got some activities. And one of these activities is actually reviewing it, and the other one is doing the actual recovery. So in the review, the only thing I need to do, or the administrator, or who is responsible at that moment, could be my line manager, he has to vote. Now, in this case, it's 1 person to vote. You can actually make that an entire team that needs to vote. And one of those persons can have a veto or not, and so on, but you can do quite some nice stuff with it. Now, I'm not going to approve it for a second, because that would kick in the run book. The problem with this system is, certainly for a demo, it will start within a few minutes. But I can't foresee which minutes, so I can't show you onto a screen and let's say we wait. But I do know possibility to cheat. So what we're going to do now is we have approved it, and then the runbook has to kick in, right? So we're going to actually look at that runbook, which is here. Reconfigure virtual machine. And it's pretty simple. We get that user data in. We get our VM list because we're going to search where it is based on the name. Where is it? Where's the path? Which host is it running? We're going to get the properties. And all the properties we need so that we've got that on our data bus and it gets passed. Then we're going to stop it. Why stop it? Well, you can't change the amount of memory when it's running. That's still something I'm hoping someday we will see. But today it's not yet possible. The same thing for CPUs. It doesn't work yet. We're going to then do reconfigure the VM, and we're going to start it. Just to show you a few things, reconfigure the VM. How I actually did that is I used the virtual machine path, which I got from the previous. So now I know exactly where it is, which host, and to who I need to talk to. And then what I changed to choose is my memory, my CPUs. You can add some notes in if you want to. So let's say you design your service manager portal that a user has to give you a reason. Then you could put that as here as well. And then, for example, if you really want to, you can see that you can use and change a lot of properties of a running virtual machine, or at least until it's stopped. Now, to cheat, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with runbook tester. I'm going to try this one out to see if it works. I'm going to say run. I believe we have set one CPU. The name was DC02, and the memory, I think 5,000 or something. Nope, 50,000 a bit too much. Here we go. And now it starts. And what we'll do is we'll actually do all of these different activities. You will see that we are now getting the VM list, and depending on the size of your infrastructure, this could take a bit longer or be a bit shorter. From the moment we find it exactly, we will be able to get all the properties. And now it is stopping. And let me go here again and show you vCenter at this moment. Nope, that's the wrong one. Sorry. Oh, here it is. And now what you can see here, unfortunately, is a bit too slow, little at the bottom. But he's actually did already the shutdown. And he's now reconfiguring the virtual machine. And you should have seen already now that here my CPU has changed to 1 and my memory has changed to 5,000 MB, and it should be powering on as we speak again. It's that simple. It's a 5-step, and you can do all this automatically. Now, what will happen further on is this. We're going to go here. No, I'm wrong again. So you see, this one is finished. The runbook has run. It's not an issue. But what normally happens at that time is if we're going to go to our incident or our service request here, it will have done this completely automatically, close it, put the notes in it, and inform the user. Now, one of the things I do want to show you is if I approve this here, whatever, okay. Okay. And okay again. Then actually what the end user is going to see within the service portal, he's going to be able to follow all the different steps. So he's going to see the approvals. He's going to see the fact that that the runbook has started and that it's finished and that his machine has been changed. See? So the review is completed and the other one is pending, because I had to cheat, of course. So, but you can see that with the entire System Center suite, you can manage all of these things and you can do your day-to-day business. Can you do everything for VMware and Xen? No. Unfortunately, that's not possible. So from time to time, you will have to use your other tools to do configuration and more. But on the other hand, the daily basis task done by one team can be easily done through System Center. All right, and with that, very simple, few small things, you can manage your VMware Xen server environment. I hope that you will look at it and at least try it out, because it can do some good stuff. And before I open the floor for questions, Thank you very much for all being there. Enjoy the rest of the show and certainly the party tomorrow. If you have questions, please come forward to one of the microphones so they become recorded. And again, thank you very much for being here and enjoy the rest of the show. Yes.
If you could you have that run book that you just did check SCCM for a maintenance window and then make that change, in a maintenance window as opposed to whenever?
Okay, so did I let it check whether there's a maintenance window, yes or no? So no, in my case, no. I don't even have SCCM running in this lab environment, but that would be a very good idea to add to that specific runbook, because that means people can reconfigure it, and it will only be done within the maintenance window time, so nobody else is interfered with it. That's actually a great idea.
Thank you.
Hi.
Yeah.
Just wanted to say I'm Belgian too, and you got to stop saying that Belgians are slow, because I have a customer of mine in the room.
Okay. Sorry, customer.
Do you know if there are plans for KVM hypervisor support?
I haven't heard anything from Microsoft, but again, I don't work for Microsoft, so I don't know their roadmaps. Yes? Can you put that mic on here in front? Okay. Apparently one mic down.
You were saying something about being able to change memory and CPU. Isn't Data Center able to do that with virtual? The Data Center edition of Windows?
Automatically, while it's running. It is? I didn't know that.
We're doing that with ESX, Data Center, and...
I didn't know that. That's good to know. I'm going to make a note of that. That's interesting. Now I have to start telling to customers that they have to buy different licenses. All right. Any more questions? All right. Thank you very much.